Stand at the bottom of the Beipangjang Gorge in southern China and look straight up. You might see nothing but empty air and thick clouds. The structure above sits higher in the atmosphere than the cruising altitude of a commercial helicopter. Suspended in those clouds is a 4-lane highway, carrying everyday commuters across the sky. This is the Duguay Bridge. Its deck hangs 565 meters above the river below, connecting two cliff faces across a massive expanse of empty air. To put that altitude in perspective, you could stack the Eiffel Tower on the valley floor and still have room to spare. The roadway sits higher than the roof of the Empire State Building. By every standard of Western engineering, placing a highway here is a logistical outlier. Yet 9 of the 10 highest bridges on Earth are located in China. The interior of the country is fractured by ancient, deep gorges and towering river valleys. For centuries, this terrain dictated exactly where humans could and could not go. Geography of this magnitude usually stops infrastructure development completely. To build structures like the Duguay Bridge, China had to overcome both the laws of physics and the traditional logic of economics. The environment of the Beipangjang Gorge is lethal. For significant portions of the year, construction crews faced blinding fog, aggressive winds, and temperatures that dropped well below freezing. Designing a crossing here presented an immediate structural dilemma. The gorge is too wide to span with a single arch, and because the river sits over half a kilometer down, building support towers from the valley floor to the road deck is physically impossible. The only viable design was a cable-stayed system. Engineers had to anchor 2 massive towers, each rising over 200 meters tall, directly onto the absolute rims of the opposing cliff faces. Assembling the roadway between those towers forced workers out onto platforms suspended by cables. On many days, the fog was so thick they could not see from one tower to the other, while wind currents were strong enough to swing a man off his footing. Then they hit a materials problem. To build the towers, liquid concrete had to be pumped straight up the cliff face. Pumping heavy, wet concrete vertically for several hundred meters generates extreme fluid pressure. No commercially available equipment on Earth could handle that strain. So to overcome this, the engineers invented and built custom high-pressure pumping systems exclusively designed for this specific site. Before 2016, crossing this geological barrier required a winding, dangerous mountain road that dropped into the gorge and climbed back out. A distance of barely 3 kilometers in a straight line took over an hour of driving. Conquering these strict physical laws compressed that dangerous hour-long mountain descent into a 1-minute commute through the clouds. When American and European engineers visit these structures, they aren't surprised by the steel or the concrete. The physics are known. What they question is how the massive funding and institutional will required for a project in such a remote location was ever assembled. In Western planning, projects require an economic case. Existing populations create demand, which justifies funding. This traps isolated communities. Without a population there, the math fails, so no bridge is built. China reverses this logic. Infrastructure doesn't respond to demand. It creates the market. They approve extreme megaprojects in isolated areas because they calculate the return on investment based on the economy the bridge will generate, not the sparse population that exists today. This approach scales across China's fractured interior, creating massive, complex networks in environments that were once considered completely off-limits to development. Previously isolated, ancient communities are now stitched into the global economy. By treating brutal terrain as an engineering problem and infrastructure as a catalyst, they remove the traditional limits of nation building. Gorges and river valleys that were once absolute barriers are now laced with steel, connecting populations that geography meant to keep apart. China didn't invent a secret formula for mixing concrete. They changed the economic rules of what can be built, turning absolute geographical barriers into the roads their citizens drive on every day.